she said. Stand there. Let me see you. I didn't know a camera could feel like a confession. 3 weeks later, she kissed me in the darkroom. Then a stranger threatened to burn everything down. My fiancé found the photographs before I could explain. My mother said choose the wedding or her. I chose truth, and truth cost me everything. But some things, once seen, can never be unseen. My name is Riley Hart, 26 years old, working the counter at Blue Pine Books in a small Vermont town where everyone knew my business before I did. I never imagined that a photography assignment for the town's spring festival would rewrite the entire shape of my life. The Chamber of Commerce hired a photographer from Burlington to shoot promotional images for the festival, and my boss volunteered me as a local face without asking. Protested. But Mrs. Abernathy insisted I had the kind of look that sells maple syrup in Sunday mornings. Her name was Josephine Calder, though she told me to call her Jo before she'd even set down her camera bag. She had short dark hair, ink-stained fingers, and the unsettling habit of studying people like she already knew their secrets. Relax your shoulders, she said during our first shoot, and I realized I'd been holding my breath the entire time. I laughed at something ordinary, and she caught it on film before I could stop myself from feeling seen. That's the shot, she murmured, more to herself than to me, and something in her voice made my chest tighten. I told myself it was nerves, the strange intimacy of a stranger's lens studying my face for imperfections. But when she showed me the photos later, I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. She looked alive. You don't smile like this for just anyone, Jo said, tilting her head, waiting for an answer I didn't have. I mentioned, too quickly, that I was engaged, as if she'd accused me of something I hadn't done yet. She only nodded and said, noted, and something about her ease made the moment feel smaller than it was. Over the following weeks, the festival committee kept finding reasons to need more photos, and somehow I kept being the one available. Jo started texting me shoot times directly instead of going through Mrs. Abernathy, and I told myself that was simply efficient. We shot at the covered bridge, the orchard, the diner with the cracked neon sign that had been broken since I was a kid. Between takes, she asked real questions not about the festival, but about me, my mother, the bookstore, the life I'd built here. I found myself answering honestly, telling her things I hadn't said out loud to my own fiancé in months. Daniel and I have been together since high school, I explained, though she hadn't asked, and my voice sounded defensive even to me. That's a long time to know exactly what you want, Jo said carefully, and I couldn't tell if it was a compliment. She never pushed, never flirted the way men usually did. Yet I felt more exposed around her than I ever had undressed. One afternoon, rain caught us at the orchard, and we crowded under a single umbrella. Her shoulder pressed warm against mine. You always look like you're waiting for permission to want something, she said quietly, watching raindrops slide off apple blossoms. I didn't answer, 'cause she was right, and I didn't know how to explain 26 years of learning to want less. She showed me how she framed a shot, her hand briefly guiding mine on the camera, and my pulse betrayed me completely. You have good instincts, she said, though I suspected she meant something else entirely, something neither of us said aloud. At the diner, she ordered black coffee and pie for breakfast, and I decided I like people who didn't apologize for themselves. What do you actually want, Riley Hart? She asked once, and the question sat in my stomach for days afterward. I told her I wanted the bookstore to survive winter, which was true, though clearly not the answer she was looking for. She let it go, but her eyes lingered a beat too long, like she was filing the deflection away for later. Daniel noticed I'd started humming again, something I hadn't done in years, and asked if work was finally getting easier. I said yes, because it was easier than explaining that a photographer's attention had cracked something open in me. Jo mentioned, almost offhandedly, that she used to shoot weddings until one particular wedding made her quit the business for a year. She didn't elaborate. And I didn't push. Though I noted the shadow that crossed her face when she said it. We started meeting for coffee even without a shoot scheduled, calling it scouting locations, though we both stopped pretending that mattered. You edit yourself constantly, she told me once, studying my face across the table. I want to see the unedited version. I felt something unfamiliar unfurl in my chest. Not quite hope, but it's nervous. Hesitant cousin. At the town dance that spring, Jo showed up uninvited, camera in hand, claiming she needed candid festival content for the brochure. She photographed everyone but kept returning her lens to me, until Daniel joked that I had a personal paparazzi. Later, near the punch bowl, she leaned close and said, "You look like someone pretending to belong to tonight." I laughed it off, but the words followed me home, sitting heavy beside the ring on my finger. That night I dreamed of the orchard, of rain and umbrellas, and woke up ashamed of how badly I wanted to go back. I started arriving early to our sessions, staying late after, inventing reasons the festival still needed just one more photo. Jo never called me out on the excuses, but her small, knowing smile told me she understood exactly what we were doing. One evening, developing prints in the community darkroom she'd rented, she stood close enough that I could hear her breathing change. "I haven't let myself feel this in a long time," she admitted, her voice barely above the hum of the enlarger. "Feel what?" asked, though some part of me already knew the answer and was terrified of it. She didn't answer with words. She reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I stepped back first, heart hammering, and mumbled something about Daniel, about the wedding, about things I couldn't undo. "I know," she said simply. No anger in her voice, only a tired kind of understanding I didn't deserve yet. I went home that night and sat in my car outside the house, unable to go inside and pretend nothing had shifted. For a week, I avoided her calls, telling myself distance would fix whatever had cracked open between us. But the bookstore felt smaller. The town felt smaller. Everything felt like it was missing its color without her in it. Daniel asked if something was wrong, and I lied again, getting better at it each time, hating myself a little more. I finally texted Jo back, asking to meet at the bridge, needing to say something I hadn't fully admitted to myself. She was waiting when I arrived, camera absent for the first time, just her, leaning against the old wooden railing. "I'm not trying to ruin your life," she said before I could speak, "but I won't pretend I don't want you. I don't know how to be the person you're describing," I admitted, my voice cracking on the last word. "You don't have to know yet," she said. "You just have to stop lying about what you already feel." I told her about growing up in this town, where being different wasn't discussed, only quietly disapproved of behind closed doors. "My mother thinks I'm marrying into stability," I said. "She doesn't know I've been rehearsing a happiness I don't actually feel." Jo listened without interrupting, and for the first time, I let myself cry in front of someone who wasn't Daniel. "Whatever you decide," she said, wiping a tear from my cheek with her thumb. "I need you to decide it for you." The wedding planning accelerated that summer. Invitations printed, a venue booked, my mother's excitement filling every phone call like static. I kept working with Jo on festival materials, though the shoots grew shorter, both of us careful not to stand too close. Daniel started asking why I seemed distracted, why I flinched when he mentioned honeymoon destinations, why my smile felt rehearsed now too. "You've been different since that photographer started hanging around," he said one night, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. I denied everything, insisting Jo was simply a professional acquaintance, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. My best friend Callie noticed too, catching me staring at my phone every time Jo's name appeared on the screen. "You look at that woman's text the way you used to look at Daniel," Callie said carefully. Not unkindly, just observant. I told her she was imagining things, but that night I deleted our messages, terrified of what they revealed even to myself. Joe, sensing my retreat, began pulling back too, canceling a shoot, citing scheduling conflicts that felt more like protective distance. I won't be the reason you blow up your life, she told me over the phone, voice tight with restraint. Maybe I want my life blown up, I whispered, immediately regretting how honest that sounded once it left my mouth. She was quiet for a long moment. Don't say things like that unless you mean them, Riley. I can't survive false hope twice. That comment stuck with me twice, and I finally asked what had happened before she came to our town. She told me about Vanessa, a woman she'd loved for 3 years, who had outed their relationship publicly during a bitter breakup. She posted our private photos online, Joe said flatly. My family found out from a stranger's comment section, not from me. I understood then why she guarded herself so carefully, why every step toward me came wrapped in visible hesitation. I'm not her, I said, though I wasn't sure yet what I was promising, or if I even could keep it. Word started spreading through town anyway, the way it always did. In glances exchanged at the grocery store, in silences at church. Someone had seen us at the bridge that evening, and by Sunday, my mother was asking pointed questions over dinner. People are saying things, Riley, she said, stirring her coffee too hard, about you and that photographer. Is there truth to it? I froze, caught between the life I was expected to live and the one quietly asking to be chosen instead. She's a friend, I said, the lie feeling heavier than any I'd told before, sitting like a stone in my throat. My mother studied me for a long moment, then simply said, be careful who you let people talk about, and let it drop. But it didn't drop for me. I carried that dinner table silence with me for days, replaying every word. Daniel's mother started asking about guest lists with a new sharpness, as though sensing something unstable beneath our engagement. I threw myself into wedding preparations, tasting cake flavors I didn't care about, choosing flowers that felt like someone else's future. Joe kept her distance for nearly 2 weeks, and the ache of not seeing her taught me more than any conversation could. When we finally crossed paths at the farmer's market, neither of us spoke, we just looked, and looking said everything. That night, I broke down in the bathroom, running water to muffle the sound so Daniel wouldn't hear me crying. I realized I wasn't grieving the relationship with Joe. I was grieving the years I'd spent performing contentment instead of living it. The festival committee announced the finalized brochure launch, meaning our professional excuse to see each other was quickly running out. This might be our last shoot, Joe said when we met at the orchard again, trying to sound casual and failing completely. I don't want it to be, I admitted, the honesty surprising us both. Hanging fragile in the late afternoon light, she set the camera down for the first time in weeks, and we simply stood there, close enough to touch. Tell me what you want, Riley. Not what your mother wants. Not what this town wants. What do you want? I want to stop feeling like a guest in my own life, I said, and something in me finally cracked open. We kissed then, gently, like a question neither of us was fully ready to answer, but couldn't stop asking anyway. It felt less like betrayal and more like the first honest thing I'd done in years. This complicates everything, I whispered against her shoulder, and she laughed softly, without any real humor in it. It already was complicated, she said. We just finally admitted it out loud. I drove home that night with swollen eyes and a decision forming that I wasn't ready to name. 2 days later, my engagement party was scheduled at the community hall, cake and banners already ordered, guests already confirmed. I told myself I would go, smile, endure it, and figure out the rest afterward. Like postponing a diagnosis. Joe texted only once. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But I needed you to know I'm not going anywhere unless you ask. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Daniel's ring catching the lamplight on my hand. At the party. surrounded by relatives toasting our future. I felt like I was watching myself from outside my own body. Daniel raised his glass and thanked everyone for believing in us. And I forced my mouth into the shape of joy. Halfway through the toast, my phone buzzed, a photo from Joe. The two of us laughing at the orchard. Unposted. Unseen by anyone. The caption read only, "This is the only photo of you I've ever wanted to keep private." I excused myself to the bathroom and stood there, hands shaking, finally admitting I couldn't marry Daniel in good conscience. The following Monday, the festival brochure launched town-wide, distributed in every shop window and mailbox along Main Street. Mrs. Abernathy had selected the final images herself, proud of capturing the town's true spirit, for the cover spread. I didn't think to check which photo she'd chosen until Daniel called, his voice tight in a way I'd never heard before. "Riley," he said, "why is there a photo of you and that photographer looking at each other like that on page 4? My stomach dropped. The orchard photo. The unguarded one. The one meant only for me. Printed for the entire town to see. Mrs. Abernathy had loved the chemistry in the shot, never realizing what kind of chemistry she was actually printing. Daniel drove straight to the bookstore, brochure crumpled in his fist, demanding an explanation I could no longer avoid giving. "Is this why you've been distant?" he asked, voice cracking between hurt and fury. "Are you in love with her?" I could have lied again. Could have blamed the photo on artistic framing. But I was tired of shrinking myself smaller for comfort. "I think I am," I said quietly, and watched 5 years of shared history rearrange itself in his eyes. He didn't yell, which somehow felt worse. He just stared at me like he was meeting a stranger wearing my face. "Everyone will see this," he said. "Your mother will see this. Do you understand what you've done to us?" "I understand what I've been doing to myself," I answered, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He left without another word. And within hours, half of Main Street had seen the brochure and drawn their own conclusions. My mother called that evening, voice trembling, asking if the rumors were true, if I had thrown away a good man for confusion. "It's not confusion," I told her, though my hands shook holding the phone. "I finally understand myself for the first time." She went silent for a long moment before saying, "I need time," and hanging up before I could respond. Meanwhile, Vanessa, Joe's ex, resurfaced online, commenting on the local Chamber of Commerce post, hinting at Joe's history of chasing straight women. The comments spread fast in our small-town group chats, twisting truth into gossip until Joe's professionalism itself came into question. Someone from the church committee suggested quietly that Joe's contract be reconsidered before the festival's final weekend events. I found Joe at the Darkroom, jaw tight, deleting messages faster than they arrived, her composure fraying at the edges. "This is exactly what happened last time," she said. "Someone else's mess becoming my public scandal. I'm not going to let them do that to you," I said, though I had no idea yet how to stop it. Daniel, hurt and humiliated, began telling mutual friends I had cheated and embarrassed the family, a version of events sharper than the truth. He hinted, in a moment of anger, that he might tell my grandmother himself, knowing exactly how much that threat would wound me. My grandmother, devoutly traditional, had raised me after my father left, and her approval had always felt like oxygen. "If you tell her before I do," I warned Daniel, "you'll be doing it out of cruelty, not honesty." He didn't respond, but the silence felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. Joe suggested she should simply leave town early, finish the contract remotely, and let the gossip die down without her present. "That's not fair to you," I said. "You didn't create this mess." "I did. By hiding for years. Fair has nothing to do with it," she said. "I've learned to leave before I get pushed out." I realized then that Joe's instinct to flee wasn't cowardice. It was a scar from Vanessa, still tender after all this time. "Don't leave because you're scared," I said. Leave because you want to. Not because this town taught you to expect abandonment. She looked at me for a long moment, something breaking open behind her eyes. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that. That night, my grandmother called, voice unusually gentle, saying only, "Come by tomorrow. We need to talk." Just us two. I barely slept, certain I was walking into judgment I wouldn't survive, rehearsing apologies for a life I no longer wanted to apologize for. The next morning, Daniel posted nothing further, but the damage to my reputation in town had already taken root. Customers at the bookstore whispered when they thought I couldn't hear, some suddenly finding urgent reasons to shop elsewhere. Mrs. Abernathy, embarrassed by the brochure controversy, quietly pulled Joe's remaining shoots, citing unforeseen scheduling issues to the committee. Joe called to tell me, her voice hollow, "I'm losing the contract." Riley. Vanessa's comments. "The rumors, they've made me radioactive here." "This isn't fair," I said again, anger rising hot in my chest for the first time since this all began. "Fair isn't how small towns work," she said. "I should know. I've been run out of places like this before." I hung up the phone and, for the first time, felt something other than fear. I felt fury on her behalf. I walked to the Chamber of Commerce office and demanded to speak with the full committee about the canceled contract. "You're punishing her for gossip, not performance," I told them, my voice louder than I intended, but I didn't apologize for it. Mrs. Abernathy looked uncomfortable. "The town has certain expectations, Riley. We can't control what people think. You can control what you reward," I said. "And right now, you're rewarding cruelty over honesty." They didn't reinstate the contract that day, but something in the room shifted. A few members exchanged uncertain glances. I left knowing I'd likely made things harder for myself, but easier. Somehow, for the version of me I was becoming. That evening, my grandmother opened her front door before I even knocked, as if she'd been watching the road for hours. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the worn kitchen chair I'd sat in 1,000 times as a child, waiting for punishment. Instead, she poured 2 cups of tea and said, "Your mother told me about the photographer. About you." I braced myself, ready for scripture, for disappointment, for the door quietly closing on decades of closeness. "When I was your age," she said instead, "there was a woman named Ruth who worked at the mill with me." I stared at her, uncertain where this was going, my tea growing cold between my hands. "I loved her the way you're describing loving this photographer," my grandmother said, voice steady, eyes distant with memory. "I chose safety instead," she continued. "I married your grandfather, and I have never stopped wondering about the life I didn't choose." The kitchen went silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator, both of us absorbing what she just admitted. "I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me," she said. "I'm telling you so you won't make my mistake." Tears blurred my vision as I reached across the table and held her weathered hand in both of mine. "Does Mom know?" I asked quietly, and my grandmother shook her head. "Some things I kept for myself. Don't do that to yourself." I left her house that evening lighter than I had felt in months, carrying her secret like a strange, sad gift. The festival's closing gallery event was scheduled for that weekend, showcasing the season's photography. Joe's work included despite the canceled contract. Determined not to let cowardice win twice in one family, I decided I would attend, publicly, without hiding anything anymore. "Call Joe." My voice steadier than I expected. "Come to the gallery Saturday. Whatever happens. I don't want to hide it." "Are you sure?" she asked, and I could hear the same fear I'd carried for years now living in her voice too. "I've spent my whole life being sure about the wrong things," I said. "Let me finally be sure about this one." Word had spread that I might attend with Joe, and by Saturday, The gallery buzzed with tension disguised as small talk. My mother arrived early, standing rigid near the entrance, unsure whether she'd come to support me or simply to watch. Daniel arrived too, jaw tight, flanked by friends who eyed me like I'd committed some unforgivable crime against the town. Vanessa, unexpectedly, had also driven up from Burlington, apparently hoping to watch her old rumors finally destroy something. Joe found me near the entrance, hands trembling slightly. If you want to walk away right now, I'll understand completely. I've walked away from myself for 26 years, I said. I'm done doing that. I took her hand, in front of everyone, and we walked into the gallery together, past photographs of the town we'd built memories in. The orchard photo hung enlarged on the center wall, my unguarded laughter framed for anyone brave enough to look closely. Whispers rippled through the crowd, but I kept my chin up, refusing to shrink myself for their comfort anymore. Vanessa approached Joe with a tight, performative smile. Didn't take you long to find your next small-town distraction. She's not a distraction, I said before Joe could respond. She's the first honest thing I've ever chosen. Vanessa's smile faltered, clearly unprepared for someone to stand firm instead of shrinking away in shame. Daniel stepped forward next, voice low but sharp. You humiliated me, Riley, in front of everyone we know. I'm sorry for how I handled things, I said honestly. But I won't apologize for finally becoming myself. My mother finally moved from her spot by the door, walking slowly toward us, everyone in the gallery watching her approach. She looked at the orchard photograph for a long moment, then at me. Then, unexpectedly, at Joe standing beside me. You make her laugh like that? My mother asked Joe directly, her voice cautious but no longer cold. I try to, Joe answered carefully, clearly unsure whether she was being tested or accepted. My mother nodded slowly, not a full embrace of understanding, but the first crack of a door easing open. In the weeks that followed, the town's whispers softened into something closer to quiet acceptance, my grandmother's steady support anchoring my mother's slow one. I stood in the bookstore window one autumn evening, watching Joe photograph the falling leaves, and finally felt like the woman in that orchard photo completely, unapologetically home. Fendi.